So welcome, Louise Anne, to the show. Really excited to talk to you because you're all about empowering women, empowering the next generation. So if you give us a little background about you so we can get to know you a bit better.
Sure. I am Louise Anne. I am a female empowerment coach and I specialize in working with women who have experienced domestic abuse and toxic relationships.
So I'd like to kind of talk about what are some of that conditioning that we give girls, that won't serve them later in life, you know.
I think we've really got to have a look at the entire way that society perceives females, because it's not just about the parents and everything else. It's about the schooling system. It's like it's been so indoctrinated for like hundreds of years, thousands of years, that we are lesser than, but also that women are in constant competition with each other. Now, I cannot think of that many films or TV shows where it isn't woman versus woman, where you've got the mean girls and then you've got, it's always, and if there's cheating, the two women are fighting because the guy has cheated on them. It's like, hold on, but he's to blame. Like, why is it always women set against women? And it's because when we come together, we are phenomenally powerful, and that is it. And it is easier to control women when they don't have that support system, when they don't have those structures in place to make them feel good about themselves. People are easier to control when they are feeling low down, when they are feeling weak, when they're feeling powerless. And that's what's happened. And now we have this whole issue where it's so ingrained into society that we're not even aware of it. It's this thing that we are blind to because we are so normalized to it. So it's things like when women are competing with each other, or it's pointing out that actually you don't have to compete with everybody else all of the time. If why are two women fighting over a guy? Why can't the guy just make a choice? Like, you're not competing to try and get attention from somebody else. If you are building a business, other women aren't your competitors. There are enough people out there, and there are enough, I work and I help other women that do the same thing that I do. And we help empower each other and build each other up and give advice on marketing and everything else. Why? Because there are enough people out in the world that can buy from all of us. We're not competing. I don't have to compete with others to look better or perceive myself as better. But that all comes down to the fact that we are conditioned to compare. We can never be good enough as we are. We always have to compare. What are they doing? What are they like? Well, they're so well behaved. And it's that thing. It's kind of like it teaches us to compare. And then we live in this whole, jealousy or arrogance. And neither of them are very nice traits for anybody to have. But if you have more than somebody else, then suddenly you start feeling cocky and arrogant. And then if you have less than them, then you start feeling insecure and jealous. But women are always set to compare. Have a look at the magazines, have a look at the social media. We are always told to compare ourselves to other people to find out where we are on a scale in comparison to them. Well, why are we doing that?
That's so true. And it's such an impossible standard that is set in society for our girls, for women in general. And it's like the goalposts are always moving. You can never seem to get where you're going unless you say screw it and just do what you want.
It's all of that thing. It's kind of like just having a look at the way that women are perceived in kind of fashion and everything else. Because fashion is marketed to women. But it is a massive thing where it's kind of like they tell you how big you should be. Now, people are like, oh, well, it's fashionable. Well, hold on. Like, the fuller figure was fashionable and attractive and everything not so long ago. And now we're going back down to size 0. Like, this is insane. There's no way that women's bodies can do that. But it's interesting if you pick things apart and find out why. It's like, when there are recessions and when there is money shortages, the fashion industry, to save money on the gowns that they give them at the galas and everything else for the celebrities, they will reduce the sizing of the clothes that they will give them. So the dresses will reduce in size because there is a recession and these fashion boutiques are saving money by making smaller gowns. Suddenly it becomes trendy, it becomes fashionable but it's all dictated on how they're saving money. And so instead you have girls out there saying, oh, well, I need to be that skinny, I need to be that size, or I need to have a Brazilian butt lift, or I need to have fuller lips, or I need to have, it's insane. And it doesn't last long enough for the girls that are following the trends to be actually able to heal from one before they're told to do
that's true. You know, and how do we even start to combat that? You know, because obviously we can instill in our girls the confidence to be secure within yourself, you know, but it's hard to shut out those images on social media, on print magazines, you know, and even the whole thing of a lot of images are even artificially generated. So we don't even know whether
now it's all AI.
So now you're comparing yourself against something that was made on a computer, which is just can you imagine how much that must mess with your mind? And you know, and it's hard because no matter how many times you're told you are good enough, it has to be your own mindset, doesn't it? You know, that says I accept that I am good enough.
The biggest thing that we can actually do for our daughters is to accept that for ourselves.
Yes.
Because if we're telling them you need to feel good about yourself, but we don't feel good about ourselves, we're just being hypocrites, and they're not stupid. Like we have smart girls. They
see.
So it's actually when we start to recognize and say, okay, instead of trying to push you to have these beliefs, and instead of trying to get you to view the world this way, I'm going to shift myself. I'm going to change my beliefs about myself. And that in turn will give you permission to do the same. And it's taking responsibility and saying, well, actually, I don't need to change your mindset. I can change my mindset and then open up the conversations for you to change yours. If you choose to join me, that's fine. But what we have got to realize is that we are raising individuals. Our daughters may be our daughters. I mean, we may want them to become these empowered individuals that we perceive them to be, but they still have freedom of choice, and they still get to make the choices, and they are still going to be grown women living their own lives, which means that the responsibility of empowering your daughters is mostly inspiring them and giving them permission, and then being aware that the choices they make are still their own.
That's
rather than still trying to control them in some other way by saying, well, no, because you should be an empowered woman. It's like, well, you know, by you trying to push them into empowerment, you're actually disempowering.
It's coercion, really, isn't it?
It is. And it may be from a good place, and it may you may mean well in everything else. And it's a really difficult situation to be in when you see your children and making really dumb choices. You have to step back and go, hold on, it's their life. And they need to learn to live it. So all I can do is empower myself and build myself up to the point that when they need me, I am here, I am strong, and I can be there and be the best version of myself for them. And then, you know, hopefully that will inspire them to follow my journey. But if they don't, that's okay too.
I think is remembering that everything starts with us. You know, as a parent, you are the first anything. You're the first role model. You're the first coach. You're the first person, you know, that they follow. So anything you desire to see in your daughter and your child, you must first be able to give yourself, or live through yourself to be able to, you know, embody that and to model it to them. Because even as a parent coach, I have to tell the parents that I work with that it all starts with you. And that can sometimes feel like a heavy, you know, burden to carry, heavy weight, because you feel so responsible. But like you said, there's only so much you can do. You can only control yourself and live out loud yourself. And then, you know, hopefully that's imparted onto your daughter.
And it's taking that responsibility where you let them know, I am human, I am flawed, I make mistakes, I own my mistakes, and I will try and do the work to repair any mistakes that I make. And it gives them permission to also be human and be flawed. I think there was a lot of people, you know, there was an entire generation that grew up where their parents were beyond reproach. Like, you could not say a bad word about your parent. You could not. Like, they would do something wrong, and if you pointed out that they did something wrong, you were in the wrong. Like, they were beyond fault. And that means that the next generation grew up and were like, okay, well, when I'm an adult, I'm not allowed to make mistakes. I'm not allowed to be flawed. Why? Because adults aren't flawed. Adults don't make mistakes. They don't screw up. And so I have to be that kind of person. And then when they did start making mistakes, it was very hard for them to actually come to terms with, well, who am I? If I'm not raising my kids and I'm constantly making mistakes, I'm a screw up, I'm a bad parent. And then they start to kind of like pick away at themselves and become their own worst enemy. And it's because they weren't permitted, or they weren't given that visual representation, that permission from the adults in their lives to be flawed. We've got to own our mistakes to our daughters and turn around and say, yes, do you know what? I'm sorry, I did screw up then, and I shouldn't have lashed out at you like that, and it wasn't your fault. And I know that, you know, you're doing your best, and I'm sorry I said that thing. And you know, give them that permission so that when they are adults, they will have relationships with others and they will expect that. You know, they're not going to go into a relationship with somebody that won't take responsibility, because they are so used to people taking responsibility. Then they will also be able to do that for themselves and say, do you know what? I made a mistake, but I'm not a mistake.
Absolutely.
Oh, I was clumsy, but I'm not clumsy. Like, that was clumsy, but I'm not clumsy. Oh, that was stupid. I'm not stupid. And you start to give them permission by doing it yourself to separate who they are from their actions. Because they see, oh, okay, well, look, you made mistakes, but I love you. So simply because I've made mistakes, you can still love me.
I think that's so powerful. And I think that when you set in the home a tone of, you know, everybody is fallible, as long as, like you said, you own up to your mistakes. And it's so important to apologize to your child and own up to what you've done, because number one, it normalizes the fact that this bad behavior that we all do at some point, you know, this bad behavior won't be normalized, because when you don't say anything about it, when it's brushed over because you can't ever tell your parent that they did something bad to you, it feels normalized. So then, you know, fast forward to the future, you know, I'm sure you'll understand this, when you get into bad relationships, but because you're used to being, you know, called names and yelled at, or that kind of thing, in your mind, well, my parents did that to me, so it's not really a big deal. They did that and so they love me. So, but once you've said to your child that I'm sorry, I did that, that was not acceptable, they understand that it's not acceptable. So they're not going to tolerate it, hopefully, you know, tolerate it in relationships, friendships, or, you know, romantic relationships.
Absolutely. Because I said, because I did a TEDx talk, and I said, it's like, we're not born knowing what the word love means. We are given a definition for it by the adults around us. So we don't know what love means. It's just a word. What we will do is we will associate that word with the treatment and the behavior that we receive. So I received a very, very distorted idea of what love is, because I felt anxious, I felt scared, my father was controlling, he was manipulative, you know, and everybody turned around and said, oh, but he loves your mum, oh, your dad loves you. And it was like, so that was what love was. That's what love felt like. So when I was an adult and I started dating somebody and I had anxiety and he was controlling and he was manipulative and I had all of those feelings again, I was like, oh, I know this is love. He
feels familiar.
Me. It wasn't. And I had to give that feeling and that treatment a new name. And it was like, okay, that's not love, that's abuse. My father didn't love me, he abused me. My ex-husband didn't love me, he abused me, because the two are very separate. So what we need to do is we need to make sure that if we are teaching our children that this is, you know, oh, if you yell at them and you scream at them and you make them cry, oh, I'm only doing this because I love you. What are you teaching them love feels like? What are you teaching them love is? Because they don't know. You're telling them this is love. And if they are scared at that point, and if they are, you know, terrified, if they are really in a bad place mentally, and you're saying this is love,
Yeah.
That's a really, really messed up way for your children to then perceive love going forward. They will seek that in relationships. They will do that to themselves and call it self-love. Because they don't know what else to do. And everybody, society says, oh, you should practice self-love. If you don't know what love is, and abuse, and an abusive or toxic behavior feels like love, then that's what you're going to do. Absolutely. And that's what happened for so many of us. And now we're trying to teach our children. And it's like, hold on, because the people that you work with and the people that will listen to this podcast are not the people that will carry on. They are the people that want to learn and want to know more. And it's like, okay, well, if you have experienced this in the past, then you get to create a new definition of love.
Yeah.
So what does it mean to you? How does it feel? What do you want your children? If you turn around and say to your children, I love you, what sensation do you want them to have? What feeling? How do you want them to feel secure and safe and heard and seen? Then make sure that whenever you're using that language to them, do it when they are in that place, when they feel that way, so that you're anchoring the word love with that sensation.
Yes, that is really powerful. What sort of lessons do you think we can pass on to our young girls as they, grow into womanhood? Because there's so many things that I feel that I didn't know, and I know some people might have known it, but there's some things that you think, am I the only one that didn't get the memo? Sort of thing, So if we could just talk about some of those lessons that I'm sure you've learned through your life, and I've learned through working with young girls, because one of the biggest ones for me is working with young girls and in friendships, how there can be toxic friendships. We're not even talking about romantic relationships. We're talking about when they're young, and there's like toxic friendships, but there is this thing of you just stay in it, you just stay friends with a mean girl because that's just the dynamic, and not having this sense of you're allowed to say, no, I don't want to be friends with you because you're not very nice to me, and not even recognizing that they're not nice to them, because they're nice to them sometimes. Monday and Tuesday they're nice to them, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. I always say to my girls, how do you feel when you're around them? Are they nice to you all the time, or is it just some, things like that? And nobody ever said that to me explicitly, if that makes sense. And other people might have just known that, but not everybody knows everything when you're young, do you? So
and I think there are a lot of people that don't know that, because it is perceived that you have your pack, and then when you have your little pack, and you have cliques. Like, girls have cliques a lot more than boys do. It's kind of like, because we are kind of more pack animals, we will seek to fit in. And I think it's the things that I wish I knew. Got two main ones. Boundaries. So boundaries are not a wall, they are a door.
I love that.
So boundaries aren't how you keep people out, it's how you give them permission to access you. So you set parameters and you say, okay, if you're going to get access to me, the parameters that I need you to meet are, I need you to respect my life choices. I need you to use the name that I ask you to use, because it's like, my daughters had nicknames that they hated, and people kept using them.
I hate that too.
And it was like,
I'd be like, I don't know who you're talking about. You're not talking to me.
But she had to set that boundary, and it did cause major issues. But it was kind of like, and in actual fact, she set that boundary with family. So it was family that was doing that was undermining a choice that she made for how she wanted to be treated. She had to set that boundary. She was given permission to do that by me, because we changed everything, and we went through and we told everybody, and we wouldn't use it because she asked not to. So, and we encouraged her, we taught her to set a boundary. She's 13 and she knew that she could set a boundary with family. And we still do. We still sit down with the girls, and they will set boundaries with each other. And it's like giving them permission. Like, so these are the rules that I want you to obey. And if you obey these rules, these parameters, then you can have access to me. And it's not really restrictive. It's not really cruel. It's just kind of like, okay, please don't, like, if how we've all done those embarrassing things, those things, and you're like, please don't mention that. That's a boundary. Like, we can set a boundary, and the girls will say, that's a boundary, please don't, because it makes me feel really uncomfortable when you keep mentioning that situation because you find it funny, but I don't. So we can set a boundary around that. And so that's it. And it's respected. And everybody in the household, we respect that boundary and we don't do that anymore. And it's giving them permission to say, okay, well, just little bits, like this is how you show respect for me. And what I teach my girls is that the people that care enough will walk through that door.
Absolutely, definitely.
The people that don't deserve to know the real, true, genuine you will stay on the other side of that door. But that isn't your responsibility. It isn't your job to force them to walk through this doorway. You just give them the option, and then they choose whether or not you are important enough to them for them to respect your boundaries, to walk through those doors, to honor your parameters. And that's it. Because we become adults that don't set boundaries in relationships with each other, with, you know, with our friends, with exactly our bosses, even our children. Like our children will take food off our plates and they will walk in while we're sat on the toilet. And it's like, okay, can I, like, boundaries? But if we've never set that boundary or we never enforce that boundary, then it's not their responsibility, because we need to actually tell them. We're giving them clear instructions on how we want to be loved.
Yeah. There's that saying, isn't it, where it's like you show people how, you teach people how to treat you.
Yes.
You know, you have to tell them, this is what I will tolerate and these are the things I won't.
Exactly. And if you have friends that don't respect those boundaries, if you have daughters, so it's like my daughters set these boundaries, and they have set boundaries with some of their friends, and they have lost friends because of it. And they have found other friends that actually honor and respect their boundaries and are willing to, you know, obey those parameters and kind of like not make jokes about their heights and not make jokes about the way that they look, or kind of like everything else like that. It's like, okay, they set these parameters. Some friends chose to stay on the other side of the door. Other friends walked through. That means, you know, who cares enough to put the effort in. And those are the people you want.
Yes, that's important to impress upon them, because at that age, they don't want to lose friends. It feels wrong. You know, I don't want her to stop being my friend. And I have to teach my girls, it's a blessing if they walk away, because now you know. Now you're not constantly trying to, you know, fight against somebody who's not going to respect your boundaries. Now they've walked away. Now you know for sure they were never my friend, and they were never going to do what it took to be, you know, a good friend.
Yeah, and it's understanding that simply because somebody else isn't willing to respect your boundaries, it doesn't mean that they are a bad person or anything else. It means that they've made a choice, and that's okay. Other people are allowed to make choices in their lives. You know, it's looking at our daughters and saying, okay, there are 8 billion people on this planet. Not all of them are going to like you. Don't try and make them all like you, because you're never gonna manage it. Let them be one of those that aren't going to like you, and that's okay. It doesn't mean you have to be nasty. It doesn't mean you need to criticize them or put them down. They made a choice, and that's okay. You know, simply because they chose not to walk through that door, it doesn't mean that there is anything wrong with you or anything wrong with them. It is simply that you two are not compatible.
Yes, exactly.
That's okay.
Yeah. One thing I think was also so important, I made a note here, is getting them to trust their intuition and their gut feeling. Because when I was a young girl, I constantly overrode my intuition, because, you know, there was a lot of things going on. You know, I wanted to people please, I wanted to fit in. But I think also part of the problem was not having the language to follow through. So if I was with a group and they were doing something that I didn't want to do, I didn't know how to say, I don't want to do that. I just didn't have the words. So I just kind of went along because it seemed easier. And I think it's important to give our girls a language of, you know, no is a complete sentence. No, thank you. I even say to my girls, I have to go. You say you've got to go home. Say your mum's called you. Say you can say whatever you want. But if you don't want to be somewhere, if you don't want to do something, don't feel like you have to. You know, but it's giving them that language to, what can I say? Because in the moment it can feel really daunting when everybody wants to do something and you are, you know, one of the ones that don't want to. And it's that fear, again, of rejection, of not fitting in, you know. and how can they feel confident enough to say, I don't feel right about this, I want to leave?
I think we've got to have a look at the way, because it's not, that's like a symptom. It's not like the root cause. It's just one of the things that happen because they don't feel worthy. They don't feel that they are heard. So it's kind of like, oh, I'm not worthy of making this choice. And that comes from a lot of the, like, and it's one of those things that in society, you know, I experienced it, and I know a lot of others, that when you say goodbye to a grandparent or something, go and say goodbye, go give them a kiss, go say your goodbyes. And so whether you wanted to go and give them a hug and kiss goodbye or not, that option was taken away from you. You don't have permission to make that choice. Then you go to school and it's like, okay, you have to go and play with these girls. Oh, they were mean to me. Go play together. I don't want to play with her. She was mean. No, go and play. She said,
make friends, be nice.
Exactly. You don't have a choice. Then they start going, you know, it's this whole thing that they have their choices. You sit down at dinner and eat what's in front of you. I don't care if you're full, you will sit there and you will eat until your plate is empty. The choice is taken away from them. Constantly reiterated, you don't have the power of making choices within your life. You have to make other people happy. You are here to make other people feel better about the choices they make. Oh, make them feel better by saying goodbye and giving them a hug and kiss, and make them feel better by playing with them. Make me feel better by eating what's on your plate. Make them feel. Your choices stop being about you and they become about how others will perceive you.
So true.
And so then you're turning around and you're putting them in a situation where there are a lot of people and they don't have the confidence of making choices for themselves. And then we're turning around saying, make a choice. You should be able to make a choice. And it's like, well, how can I make a choice?
It's so true.
When the adults in my life have always made my choices for me. And now you're telling me to make a choice, and now you're saying to stand by my choice. I don't know how to make a choice, and I don't have to stand by my choice because you've always said that I, you know, if I make the wrong choice, you know, it gets taken away from me, and I'm in the wrong. So it's that, and it's like, okay, make choice and then support them. Like I said before, it's like we're raising them to be adults that will make choices in their own lives. The choices that they make, it means that sometimes when they're young, they will make stupid choices, and you just have to sit there and say, okay, then that's not endangering your life. I will let you make that stupid choice. Like, if you're going to try that, fine. Like, I will stand back and I will see what happens with this. And it's supporting them when their choices don't go right, so that they start to know that making choices and standing by those choices is safe. You know, it's okay if you make a wrong choice. You know, I will support you and I will love you because you made a mistake, and that's okay. So it comes back to that whole, it's all interwoven. Like,
it's all interwoven.
So if they feel safe enough to make the wrong choice, then, and still be loved and still, you know, then they're going to be able to make those choices, and they're going to be able to say to their friends and go, no, I'm going to go home. That's true. It, because they're going to know, even that no matter what choice they make, as long as it's right for them, they'll be loved and supported in it. And they know that they have the freedom of making choices because they've witnessed choices be made. They've seen people make the wrong choices. They've made the wrong choices. And it's like, okay, look, it's that falling over and picking yourself up again.
Can we speak also, though, to some of the things that you went through as a young girl, and you can kind of see it replicating in your daughters? How do you navigate that whole not getting your feelings muddled up and seeing them as you at that age, but also wanting to,
I'm sorry, was I meant to be doing that? Because
or sometimes it kind of triggers you.
You just set that bar really high.
Because it's really hard, isn't it?
Navigate this. I don't.
You don't.
Have brutal honesty. I don't. But I speak to my girls, and I think that's it. It's kind of like, as I'm healing, as I'm going through it, and they do trigger me. Oh my word, they trigger me. And it is hard, and it has been brutal, because there have been things that have happened and I've just wanted to scream from the rooftops, like, this, why are you doing this? Like, it's not going to work out for you.
Yeah.
But I know that the choice is theirs. I step back and I look at who I am.
Mm-hmm.
And as tough as the lessons were, I am where I am because I went through them.
Yes.
I am the person that I am because of the experiences that I had. And had somebody come in and stop me having those experiences, I wouldn't be who I am. I wouldn't be doing what I'm doing. I wouldn't have the children that I have, the relationship that I have. I had to have those hard, negative experiences in my life in order to give me the opportunity to grow. So sometimes you have to step back and get triggered.
Yes.
have your moments.
Deal with your trigger yourself.
Yeah. And then step back and say, okay, but what part of this triggered me?
Yeah.
Why did it hurt? And a lot of it was because I look back and I'm like, okay, well, I wish I didn't have to go through that. Like, I'm trying to stop them experiencing it because I wish I hadn't have experienced it. So then I will journal and I will write down, and it'll be kind of like, okay, but what was the gold within the wound?
Yeah.
What was the blessing from that experience? And then I'll write it out, and it's like, okay, even though that was really, really hard, I did actually develop a huge amount of tenacity. I developed coping skills. I developed a thick skin. All of these different things. And it's like, okay, but there is always a lesson or a blessing that you walked away with from that situation. Even if you can't see it at that point, it's like, okay, but where am I? Like, where did it lead me to? That was a point of having it. And it's like, okay. So they're also going to have things happen in their lives. They are also going to go through things, and they will be better for it.
Yeah.
So the fact that my older two have an emotionally abusive father, I really struggled with for a long time. And it was like, okay, I had to step back and say, but I married an emotionally abusive man because of the unhealed trauma from my emotionally abusive father. If they learn to deal with narcissistic and toxic behavior as children, they will not tolerate that behavior, and they will not tolerate that in their relationships when they are adults. My 13-year-old, she was 12 at the time, it was shortly before her 13th birthday, she cut contact with her father. So she doesn't have a relationship with him anymore. She chose that she was tired of being the scapegoat. She was tired of the bullying, the criticism, the remarks, everything else. And she chose to cut contact. If I had cut contact for her, if I had said, no, you're not seeing him, he doesn't deserve you and everything else, she never would have developed that strength. She never would have learned how to do that. And now she applies those lessons and those understandings in other areas of her life, and they will carry her for the rest of her life. I gave her the opportunity to grow and to learn. And my other daughter still sees him, but she's on her own journey and she's having her own path. It triggers me. Of course it triggers me. It hurts. But she has to learn those lessons herself. She's never going to be everything she's capable of being if I constantly take away her opportunities to grow.
As much as we want to protect them, I even said to my she's 11 now, my daughter, yesterday, I said to her, the more you overcome these tough things, eventually you literally will be unstoppable, because nothing will phase you, or not much will phase you, because you're like, you know what, I did that then and I got through it, and there's nothing else builds up that resilience. There's just no other way. I can't tell you what to do. I can't pick you up and move you to what you should be doing. The fact that you figure it out, or don't even figure it out, just get through it. You've built up that resilience. Just as we're wrapping up, what habits do you have that you pass on to your girls that just kind of helps you with your emotional well-being, I suppose? Are there any habits or things that you do that you think
one of the main things that we do? So I teach my girls that there is a difference between confidence and arrogance, because a lot of confident women get called arrogant, and it's like we reframe it. So it's like, Confidence is how you feel about yourself. Arrogance is how you feel in comparison to others. Confidence is, I look good today. Arrogance is, I look better than her.
Yeah.
Confidence is, I did that really well. Arrogance is, I did that better than anybody else. There is a difference. Confidence builds you up. Arrogance builds you up while tearing someone else down. So we do confidence, not arrogance. You can build yourself up, but don't do it in comparison to anybody else. Don't look at others and say, okay, well, where am I on the scale? So it's building confidence. So instead of saying, oh, I was the best in class today, I was like, I did really well in class. And we will reframe it. It's like, no. You don't tear anybody else down to build yourself up. And we do that, all of us. It's kind of like, you know, so when they come and there are things that have happened, there is no comparison. So they don't compare to each other. It's not like, oh, I look better than you.
Yeah.
I look damn good.
Yeah.
Okay. You don't need to. And so we do that. We change wording so that we can build confidence, not build arrogance. We're not trying to tear anybody else down while we're doing it.
Yeah, that's a really good one. I also, with my goals, I teach them about journaling. And sometimes you just got to dump what's worrying you, get it out of your brain and down on a piece of paper. Rip it up if you have to after. But sometimes you just have to get it, you know, get it down, get it out, you know.
So because I have, so like my eldest, she will journal, write everything down. My second born, not so much into the writing.
Yeah.
But what we do is we do voice notes. So just as much as writing letters and stuff, she will record voice notes and she will rant, because, you know, it's just the physical thing of writing. It's not her preference.
It's not for her.
Okay.
Yeah, that's okay.
Because it's also, it can be a lot quicker.
Yes, that's true. That is so true. That's so true.
It's giving them a safe space to actually, so journals, I'll leave my journals everywhere in the house and nobody reads them.
Yeah.
And so my daughters know that is a boundary we have in this house. They have taken their journals to places like school and stuff, and their journals have been read. So it's like they're not always safe, which is why I think, you know, sometimes they do the voice notes instead, especially if it's about somebody in particular.
Yeah, exactly.
And then delete. I've always said triple check to make sure that you are on voice notes and not
and send it to somebody like, whoops.
But so it's just kind of like, and then just delete, and it's like, okay, there you go, not my feelings anymore. And I journal out, brain dump all of them.
I also love to get my girl, I just let them know to keep their playfulness, and we get silly, and I find that it releases, you know, because sometimes days can be so, things can be so, life can be serious, things to be done, places to get to, people to see, and sometimes just get silly. So we like, you know, silly dances, chuck those little foam balls at each other in the sitting room and do silly voices and just like play. Because I think as they get older, play becomes less and less. So I think we retain it by being silly.
Yeah, absolutely. But it is that whole thing. It's kind of like, that goes back to the way society kind of raised us, that it was like, okay, you're allowed to play, like girls are allowed to play to a certain age, and then they don't play anymore because they start taking on responsibility and everything else like that. But it's kind of like, and in the whole Barbie movie and everything, it's like you put down your dolls for the last time.
Yeah.
And that's it. And we're not permitted to play anymore. We're not allowed to be silly or anything else like that, because it's not deemed very
ladylike.
Yes, it's not very ladylike.
It's not ladylike.
It's like, well, hold on, I'm a lady and I'm doing it, so that means it's ladylike.
It's fine. That's right.
It's making the choices, and so yes, it's being silly and it's doing the things that people don't necessarily think you should be doing.
It helps keep that connection, you know.
It does.
Spontaneous and in the moment, you know. I really do love that. But thank you so much. I think we just about did under an hour, didn't we? We were fine. We didn't get, you know, we didn't get lost and derailed, and
not too much now.
Not too much today. Oh, well, thank you so much. It was really, really, I'm so happy to have spoken to you, and thank you so much for coming on.
Absolute pleasure. Thank you so much.